Welcome back to another episode of Generally Assembled, your favorite House Republican podcast. Jason Gottesman, joined by Representative, Chairman,
all
Dad,
around, okay,
umpire, golfer,
musician. I play the piano.
Pianist.
Yeah, pianist.
Um,
Listen, there's an old saying.
Frostburg State alumni.
That's right. There's an old saying: "Jack of all trades, master of none."
Yeah,
that's me. You know, that can do a lot of things, none particularly well.
I prefer a mile wide and an inch deep.
Okay, that could work. That's that actually has that gets a lot of use in our profession, right? In the political world.
Yes,
that gets a lot of use.
Well, I'm reading this book. It's about 15 years old, but it's called In the Heart of the Sea, and it's by Nathaniel Philbrick, who's one of my favorite historical writers, and it's about the whale ship Essex, and the Essex is one of the great whale ship wreck stories of all time. The boat actually got attacked by a whale, and there was about 8 survivors, and when they found them, there were only 2 alive, but a lot of bones in the boat, meaning they had to eat each other.
Really?
Yes. So it's a crazy story. I don't know exactly. I'm still reading the book. So,
okay. But
part of the beginning of it, Nathaniel Philbrick lives on Nantucket and has become a huge Nantucketite. But part of the beginning of the book is a brief history of Nantucket, because that was like the whaling capital of the world, and he was going through the way in which Nantucketers had their own sort of way of talking about it. He had this one phrase that I could not help but laugh about how silly it was. It was about how people on Nantucket referred to people who were cross-eyed, and apparently they would, if you were cross-eyed, they would say you were born midweek and looking both ways for Sunday. I don't understand.
I love that.
Like, oh yeah, that guy's born midweek is looking both ways for Sunday.
So the first person who came up with that, right? There had to be a first, and the thought process that has to be going through your mind to come up with that as a saying just leads to so many more. Like, that's not the. How many other sayings did that person have that we'll never know?
If they even just had that one, that is a great career in saying development.
Saying development, I like. And we have Josh, my son, brought up the other day a guy who I've coached with, who's a phys ed teacher at Bedford, and he says, he says he picked up something from you. I say a lot, oh, by the way, right? Mm-hmm. And oh, by the way, usually if I'm in the midst of an argument and saying, oh, no, by the way, this is also another factor of that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he said, Coach Swaim started to pick that up, and he said he credits it to me. We do pick that up from each other. Like, we do get those phrases.
I get from my dad. My dad uses a lot to break silences.
Well, does he put the well in front of it, or is it just
Yeah. And it's something that I do, and it's when I hear myself, I hate it because my grandfather was always my mom's dad, so my dad was
very critical
of him saying that all the time.
You don't like space fillers. I tell the boys all the time, I don't enjoy hearing the word like as you're filling space in a sentence. Mm-hmm. So it's like that kind of I don't. It's not something that I deem.
Well, but it's hard in situations like this where we're ad-libbing everything, and you're trying to get a flow started.
Yep.
You're trying to.
It's not like you've written
rhythm
it out
and get through it. Yeah, it is hard.
Well, this is why higher education is so important.
That's true.
Because we're able to teach kids how to speak, hopefully in public.
Although I like to tell people my public speaking class in college, I got a B+ in a class in which everybody else got A's.
Really?
Yes.
That's surprising.
There was a period of time in my life
director.
where I was very afraid of public speaking. I was terrified of it.
Yeah. What is it? The number one fear that people have?
Yeah, and then law school broke it out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really started to enjoy it, and doing especially public arguments.
So I heard one time a comedian say that he was an introvert, and then spoke about how a lot of comedians are, and you would think, like, how can that be? You're out there telling jokes, you're laughing, and he said actually a lot of them battle fear, stage fright.
Sure.
They don't like interactions with large groups of people, and some of them are actually very depressive. But you don't see that in what they do. I've always said that just because somebody speaks well or is in front of people, it doesn't make them an extrovert. Like
Yeah.
and vice versa. If somebody does really well with crowds of people talking one-on-one, doesn't necessarily translate to getting up in front of people and speaking. And we see that in the role of politics. Yes, speaking's a big part of it, but it's not as big a part as sometimes people think.
Right.
There's members who don't speak a lot on the House floor or the Senate floor, don't give a lot of speeches back in the district, but they can absolutely go up to somebody and explain why something is the way it is. They speak well, just not necessarily they're not people who like to be in front of a group in that kind of a forum.
Sure, it's retail, and I've worked for a number of people throughout my career who are much better at the retail side of politics than they are in the grandstanding
Right.
in front of the large crowd in the arena style. And there's the people who I think often you find that really thrive and seek that spotlight are actually not as good at the retail side, or they one loses the other.
And
it's
when
not
you
exclusive,
have
but
you
both.
have those dynamic leaders that are really good at both, that's when you see kind of the rise,
Correct.
if you will,
Yep.
right? Like those are the individuals that tend to seek higher office, that tend to seek statewide, national. The gifted, when you're really talented at both those aspects of the political world,
Yeah.
the retail and the more outward showing of a larger group, right? The grand, I don't want to call it grandstanding because sometimes it's not. It's just the way it works. Like it's just. But when you can feel as comfortable speaking in front of a large group or doing a press conference that you can go in door to door and you're successful and you do real well at both and you come across as authentic and genuine at both, that's usually when you have the mark of somebody who's particularly talented.
Well, then, yeah, like last week when you and the Senate Republicans rolled out a higher education proposal, there's a bank of cameras in front of you, and reporters who are typically pretty critical of anything that happens around here, and that's to be able to stand up and talk about that very important topic is.
That's why it's important to be, anytime you do something like that, be passionate about the topic you're speaking of and be very knowledgeable about it, because it's never going to go exactly the way you have in your mind.
Right.
Because you got lights on and you're looking at it. And look, you're not looking at it a bunch of people who are quote unquote supporters, right? That they're kind of cheering you on. Like, no, you're looking at a bunch of blank stares. Writing stuff in a notebook, like, well, does this work? Or
And
how
the
does
creation of the permanent record with video.
Right,
Like,
absolutely, it's it is. It can be nerve-wracking, but that particular press conference, people were very prepared because it's a big issue, and we were able to speak about it a little bit last time, and as you hear the feedback from that, it really reinforces what we felt, which is higher education in and of itself, and when you talk about post-secondary education, all of the fields that go into that, it's not just about education,
Right.
like it is kind of on the K through 12 level. It is really about career development. Knowing, and people understand that when you tie higher education, certification, degree work, whatever, into the workforce, it really makes the connection for people. And that's what we believe that package of bills and that legislation is going to do, but that's what that message does as well. It's not just about sending young people off or being retooled as an older person in a new career just to say you have a piece of paper. It's about, are you developing career skills? And those career skills are very good for specific careers. They're also good if you change, if you find people changing careers, which happens a lot more today. I mean, I have friends who have changed career fields 5, 6, 7 times by the age of 40-something. That didn't used to happen. So the ability to be dynamic and flexible as institutions of higher education and post-secondary education, as well as that ability to be dynamic and in your own life and your own career, really is something that we're highlighting now.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about what you all laid out last week is that it was one of the few times where I have seen a rollout of something so large and with as much detail as it started out with, that was so well covered in the press, that was in response to something that a very popular governor put out that was not criticized. I did not see much public criticism, if any, following last week's announcement, which, typically for anything that happens here is pretty incredible.
It was because it was, again, well thought out to the needs of Pennsylvanians. It didn't take really a political. It wasn't hyperbolic, right? It wasn't, we're going to put something out that's going to incite, if you will, the other side to say, no, this is putting something out that we believe people can rally around, and show that conservative principles when it comes to how we spend tax dollars. What's it about? We do spend tax dollars. We do have government, right? How are you going to be accountable for those dollars? How are you going to track it? And what are you going to use as the metrics to success? People can relate to that. And there's nobody who's going to come out and say that's not acceptable. Again, how we get to the end product, that's going to be debated. But in terms of the ideas that were laid out, people can absolutely make the connection to how that can move Pennsylvania forward.
Yeah, I like as a caucus what we've been doing is and this is a furtherance of that, is taking, before I think we got into a position of taking conservative problems and offering conservative solutions. And I think we've now moved to taking problems that the public believes are problems, or that are, objectively problematic, like the future of higher education, and offering conservative and Republican solutions for them. So tailoring a response to things that are widely believed to be problems, or that the people would want to be solutions to.
So I'm gonna take this back to umpire school to highlight your point. And this is something that we were taught. And I'm going to say, so the governor comes out with a plan, but the first part before he comes out with the plan, he says, we have a problem here, right? One of the worst things you can do is come out and be disingenuous and say, there is no problem here. If there really is one, like to come out and say, there's no problem here, this is all made up. Well, but the people back home can feel that there is a problem. So the first thing that you do is recognize, yes, we have common ground there. So they taught us at school, the worst thing you can say, and I was guilty of saying this one time they simulate managerial arguments where a guy will come out and he'll start yelling at you, and you've got to kind of absorb that pressure. And one of the first things I said to a fake manager, who came out to argue was, it wasn't even close. Like, I had that call right, and it wasn't even close. So afterwards, they kind of reevaluated how everything that I said. And they said, one thing you never want to say is, well, it's not really close, because otherwise they wouldn't have come out. Like, nobody's coming out on an obvious call. Clearly, it was close enough to bring an argument, right? So first thing you do is don't simply dismiss that person who is, yes, on the other side of an issue from you, can't even see that there's a problem. So that's what we did. We didn't dismiss the fact that the governor's right. There's a problem with how we fund higher education. We acknowledge that. And that's when you say, okay, but your solution creates more bureaucracy, more government. Right. Our solution focuses more on outcomes and students, and that's why we're going to bring this forward. Now you have what you saw, which is, this is a real adult conversation. Let's let this develop. Let's not try and come out and criticize and poke holes in it. Let's let it develop. And I think that's where we were successful, and we just need to continue to do that on a whole host of issues.
Let's talk about going back to confidence and being in the public sphere. And I don't think you could see more confidence in somebody who is so dominant than Scotty Scheffler on Sunday at the Masters. Saturday and Sunday, to be honest with you.
Yeah. The conditions were tough. So the Masters is a tournament that, much like the Open Championship overseas, that is really determined by the weather in terms of the difficulty. Like we've seen, I remember when DJ won in the fall, when the course was very benign and there was no wind, shot like 20-something under par, if I remember correctly.
But then you have Zach Johnson, who won, I think, with like one over or one under or whatever.
It's one of those golf courses and one of those tournaments that is really dependent on the conditions, the weather conditions. Well, they had brutal conditions. You ask any golfer, would you rather play in wind or rain? Every time they'll tell you rain. They'd rather play in rain with no wind anytime. Playing in wind is the most difficult thing to do in golf. So here you are on this kind of a stage, at that kind of a course, and the wind is gusting.
And we've talked about how open it actually is. It's not like many of the other golf courses that you come across where there's a lot of trees, things that block it out. And, the wind can get swirly in trees and stuff like that. But, the scenes at the 18th green where the sand was just blowing out of the bunker because it's so exposed at the top part.
Get pinned back. And it was really a tough – so – here you have this test of golf where you had some of the tougher conditions you'll see at Augusta. Factor in what Paul McGinley said, if anybody watches the Golf Channel, which is Scotty Scheffler didn't have his A game.
Mm-hmm.
The man's the best ball striker I've ever seen since Tiger, and yet he was struggling at times with his ball striking. So you put the conditions in, the fact that he didn't have his A game and what he does the best, he wasn't doing it the best in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And he won by 4 strokes. Not he snuck through because the guy who was leading by 5 collapsed on the back 9. I mean, there were guys who collapsed on the back 9,
right,
but they weren't leading the tournament. And Scotty Scheffler won by 4 strokes. And like you said, and you and I even texted back and forth, there's confidence, and then there's what this guy is doing right now, which is there's a piece about him in the midst of competition and in the midst of – I mean, the guy had a double bogey on Saturday back-to-back. He doesn't make double bogeys.
Yep.
And the way he responded, the way he played, I now believe that Scotty Scheffler will go on to win at least 6, 7 majors, and I believe he has a chance to make double digits.
Yeah, I mean, look, you certainly hope so, and because right now he is so dominant. And I think we talked about, this, that the confidence comes from, much like confidence in public speaking, being secure in not only who you are, but the subject matter at hand. And so he's got both, and there's something to be said for the fact that, one time I heard a golf announcer say, and I believe it's played out numerous times since I've heard this, and it was when Sergio Garcia won the Masters, and they said, Sergio had so much potential, but his life was so chaotic, and they went through all these different things with girlfriends and social life and being a young celebrity because he did, burst on the scene at the PGA Championship, up against Tiger Woods when he was a teenager, and he was all over the place, and they said, there's something to be said for golfers play better, professional golfers, when their life is settled. And so when he just got married, I don't know if they had their first child on the way or not, but he was at a stage in his life where the outside distractions didn't matter, and those outside distractions never occur to Scotty Scheffler. He's a young guy. He's a man of faith, as we talked about. Very traditional in how he lives.
Who is a man of faith, and they really seem to use that as part of their teamwork. They share that together. They share that faith. They share that belief. His family does as well. You can just tell that golf is not the most important thing in life, but he works it like it's the love of his life. Like the way watching him practice after the rounds and stuff, and the effort he puts into it, but yet it doesn't. And he said this many times. It doesn't define who he is. It did define Tiger. It defined Tiger. And,
that was his whole identity.
And Tiger talked about it, spoke about it. That's not the case with Scheffler, and I believe that has given him a perspective that at 27 years old, 2 major championships, 2 Players' Championships. I'm not sure if he's at double digits now in PGA Tour wins, but he's close. He is on his way to, I think, the next 10 years doing remarkable things.
I mean, it's a lot easier for us to say that for somebody who's won, it's a lot easier to be secure in your life and in all of that when you've won like $36 million on the golf course.
Sure,
in 10 weeks.
And it's amazing, right? Like so the earnings. But I feel like Scotty Scheffler was that before.
Yes,
before
golf
the
is what he
signature
does.
events.
It's not who he is.
Yes, and he does it at a high level. Watching the tournament, I loved what I saw from your guy, Ludwig Oberg. I think he's a star in the making.
Oh yes, he's here. As I said, he's here to stay.
He is. I love watching him play. He's going to win a major, and there's no doubt in my mind. I love the fact that Max Homa, even though he didn't win, the rap on him has been he falls apart at the majors. He didn't. I mean, the guy just made par after par after par in really tough conditions.
I like they asked him, what did you learn about yourself? I think it was after Saturday's round, or maybe it was after Friday's round, when it was really, really tough. And he goes, what did you learn? I'm really good at golf.
Yeah.
It was terribly hard out here today.
Yeah. I think it was Saturday was maybe the worst day for him.
Yeah.
and yet you looked at his sheet and it was all pars. Like he just didn't let it get away like he has in the past.
Yep.
So I feel really good for him because he's one of those fan favorites. You know, you want to see him do well. I do think the PGA Tour made a statement. I think what I had said, which is eventually you're going to start to see the toll of 4-day tournaments at these kind of golf courses take their toll on live golfers. Not completely yet.
I'm not there. We talked about this. I'm not there yet.
I still think Koepka's going to be there, and Cam Smith is going to be there, and Bryson's going to be there in the PGA. But eventually they got to start playing 4-day tournaments. I
mean,
believe.
you had some really notable PGA Tour players who have played the Masters really well in the past that didn't even make the cut.
And they're going through, and I actually was listening on the radio this morning. When you think of Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, and Ricky Fowler, that crew, right? That's the crew we're talking about, the kind of the stars.
Yeah.
There's something going on. They're really struggling, and I don't know what the answer is. They were talking this morning about, well, they're starting to have kids now and all this. I don't know if I exactly buy that because it kind of goes against your life is getting more settled. But something is wrong with their golf game, and particularly Jordan and Justin. I'm shocked, and I don't know what that is.
But I also wonder if it's the problem of early success for them.
But that's not them wearing. But real quick before we
yeah.
go there, that's not them wearing down late in rounds.
No,
like the
that's
live
just
guys.
them. They're
That's
not even
just,
showing up.
They don't have form.
Yeah.
Right. The live guys, I think, when I saw Bryson how he played early, and I'm not going to attribute it all to that, but eventually I do wonder the mental. I mean, you've played competitive golf. Like
where's he down?
My son played over the weekend, and he was slept most of the way home. Like when you play in the wind and that competition wears you down, I just wonder how much that extra day.
But then Cam Smith got stronger as he went on.
Yeah, and he did finish top 10.
Yeah, and so look, I think these players show up in the majors regardless. I think it's unfortunate that not every live player has the ability to qualify for the majors. In a way, because it's easier for someone like Cam Smith and Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau because they went into the Masters and they went into live with very high world golf rankings. So it's easy for them to play a few international series events, place well, go elsewhere to play and get your world ranking points, and then get in. It's like the difficulty is somebody for like Joaquin Niemann, who really had to go. He was still not very high up there when he left to go to play for live. So he had to go and rebuild that, which is why that story is so incredible. But again, going back to Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas and Ricky Fowler, they had that success early. So they made their millions. They got everything they needed. They have the big sponsorships. Jordan Spieth is still the face of Under Armour. But then, Ricky Fowler's still the face of Puma and Cobra. And has numerous sponsors because he's just so popular. And then you look at how their life is changing. So you have all that success early, then you get married, then you have kids. And then you're like, I have millions upon millions of dollars in the bank. My kid was up 4 times last night. What is really that important? And it's just like, you start to maybe throttle off a little bit.
But as competitive as a guy like Justin Thomas is, and I'm going to use him, like you can just see it. He hates to lose.
Yeah.
And he's working. He's going through caddies. He's going through, the other guys are going through coaches. Like they acknowledge that the game is starting to move. They're in a down spot. How do you resurrect that? Like Fowler did even get back to this point. I mean, he kind of resurrected. It'll be interesting to see. I think what it proves is this. I'm not one who buys into it either way with the kids and all that. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. Golf is hard.
Yeah,
golf is
really and it comes and it goes, and you don't know why.
And look at Victor Hovland. Last year at the end of the season, everybody thought, I don't know that he's going to lose again. Like the way he looked when he won the FedEx Cup, we're all talking about like Victor Hovland is the next guy. And he's fallen off the face of the earth that quick. The form can leave you that quick, and then you can get in your head that quick.
Or I'll even throw out there Colin Morikawa, who was in contention this week.
Absolutely, and he get back into contention because he hasn't been in a while.
Right, and he was down. He came out, won a lot very early, including 2 majors, both of which were COVID majors, which they pointed out on Sunday, which was, they were quiet,
no
nobody
fans
was there,
yeah.
the pressure was a lot different.
It to me it demonstrates 2 things. It demonstrates how difficult it is to play professional golf, right? Because you've heard about these. Oh, it's going to be Jason Day next. It's going to be that. And to me, it also once again shows the greatness of Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus.
Yes.
That's what it demonstrates to me, is that to be that kind of great at this sport for that sustained period of time is truly generational. We want to anoint the next one. Oh, it's going to be Jordan, right? It's going to be Jason Day. It's going to be Justin Thomas. Guess what? It's not. It's going to be Rory, right? Rory went through that period of like, oh, this guy's going to win 10 majors.
Yep.
And he can't get that next one.
Well, but just think about this. It's been 10 years since Thomas, Spieth, and Fowler were designated the big three. It's been 15 years, or a little bit better, since Rory McIlroy came on the stage. That's a long time to sustain a career. That is a long time to be and especially an individual sport like golf, to be at the top of and the peak of your profession. I mean, maybe our expectations are not aligned with reality, because we just came out of the Tiger Woods era where he was dominant for 15 years.
I do. I think he created a new expectation, and so every time you had a guy that flashed, it was going to be, oh, he might not lose again.
Yep.
But we've learned now that that's not the case. I'm anxious to see now how the next guy that we're anointing with that, Scotty, does, because he's different than those other guys in many ways, on and off the golf course. He has his own. He doesn't take it with a swing that people look at and say, "Wow, that's different."
Yep.
But yet he is willing to make changes, like the putting. Going to a putting coach and
you
and
work
all
at
those
it. It's
things.
your craft.
So I'm anxious to see how it goes. But it just reinforced to me as I watched Tiger walk off with that amateur Neil Shipley, who got the
Pennsylvania native.
Come on. Like, what a week for that guy.
Yeah.
You're the low amateur, you make the cut, and literally you get to walk the last day with maybe arguably the greatest of all time to do it at a place that he's done it 5 times. First of all, hats off to Neil Shipley, who just had the greatest week of his life. But when I watched him, I'm like, he truly was the greatest. And we didn't even realize. We knew it was great, but you didn't realize until now, and you see how tough it is, and it's why we love the sport. And I just and no better setting for the sport than what we watched in Augusta. Truly hope I can make it there one day.
Me too. All right. Well, I think that's it. We did it.
We did it.
That's generally assembled for this week. You can find this podcast where your favorite House Republican podcasts are found. www.pahousegop.com/mypodcasts. Also available on Apple. We're available on Spotify, and we are also on the YouTubes. That's not the series of interconnected tubes. That's the internet. This is the YouTubes, or the YouTube.com. All right. Well, I'm getting the hook from the producer over here. So for Representative Jesse Topper, Chairman of our Education Committee, I'm Jason Gottesman, and this has been Generally Assembled. We are out of here.